Peter the Great in our story is Peter the Third's dad, not in history. This is not. This is a choice that our showrunner made, and for narrative, and it works really well because Peter the Great has such a huge personality. And in fact, when they move into his apartments, Peter the Great often appears as a ghost to haunt Peter.
We are your legacy.
What will Paul see? And you? As you grow larger and larger, as we both know you will, I will look smaller and smaller to him. And to you.
It is mad talk. You hear old voices, Hugo, Peter the Great, calling you back to a place you have left. But hear my voice. I see your son's eyes. The way they brighten when they're on you. And yours on him. And us. We have rewritten each other in the best, most infuriating way. That is enough.
I have a memory as a child. It's an aftermath memory, but I remember now at more or less at the age of 7, being taken to the opera by my aunt in Brazil, which is where I was born and I lived until I was 7 or 8. And I remember going to the opera in Rio and seeing a Madame Butterfly and being completely blown away by the sets. And I then found out it was designed by an artist called Tomio Taki. And there were these, the whole set was composed by colorful umbrellas that turned. And whilst they turned, they sort of turned into different colors. And I remember the hues of yellows and reds. And I went to look, as an adult, I went to look up that opera set, and it all came back. And I think, it was there somehow, but I just didn't realize until much later. After I graduated from theater design, again, I didn't know if I was going to be working in theater and film. I didn't really have a clear direction that I wanted to pursue. I met an old family friend who I didn't really know from before, but it used to be my mom's friend from Brazil. And her ex-husband is a director called Walter Salles, and he was going to be directing a movie in Rome. And she said, "Oh, maybe you should try an intern on his movie, and I could put you guys in touch." And that's how I got my first job as an intern. And that was working with Dante Ferretti, who is a huge maestro and multi-Oscar nominated, three Oscars in, and his wife Francesca who's his set decorator, and I worked with her. That's who I interned with. I was drawing for her. So I interviewed for The Great with Mary McGowan and Tony McNamara when they were looking for a designer, and they spoke about building sets on stage and it's shooting in London, and I was like, ooh, what a great opportunity. And so I interviewed again, and I went into it with a real sort of energy, and I was already in love with the project, and I sort of really clicked with Tony and Marion. When I met them, I absolutely adored their energy and their ideas, and clearly I had a pilot to sort of start from. So I looked at that, and I then had to understand how to, in a way, make it mine, so to speak. I mean, that sounds a bit possessive, but I obviously wanted to sort of go into it afresh and feel that I could bring something to the project, and it did because we definitely created a world from scratch, because the pilot was shot on location and we were going to be building the palace now. It was a great opportunity to sort of grab something which had been in a way established, but to develop it into a whole new thing. And we built on 4 big stages in East London in a studio that I love, but it's not exactly like your sort of it's quite unusual because it's quite an old studio. So the stages, some of them are great. Some of them we really filled up to the maximum potential because we had so many sets. Obviously, my research did involve also looking at the Russian palaces and where Catherine actually did live and what she built while she was reigning. And there are definitely influences from different palaces in Russia, in St. Petersburg and palaces like Tsarskoe Selo, which Catherine built a part of. They often feature in new salons that we build, but it was just the possibility of expanding the research and just looking at amazing palaces that were built before, during the 18th century, just allowed me to sort of, I think, broaden my research and just play around with influences. And to be honest, when we got to season 3 and we built a whole new wing of the palace, I think there was just so much trust from the showrunner and the producers in the process that we'd established, in the design process, that I was actually free to, I was looking at frescoes and palaces that had interesting artwork that for me would bring something to the spaces that we were creating or to the scenes. My art directors come to me and it's like, oh, look, I found this. And it did happen in season 3 where I was like, oh my God, I came across this bedroom before and I love it. And it's such a great idea and we could do this. And it's such a collaborative process with the team also that it's difficult to say where it starts and where it stops. Going back to season 1, Catherine and Peter had been fighting, and so Catherine had a coup in place against Peter, and she took over in season 2. He abdicates, and so we see in season 2 the palace is half destroyed, and it's like seamless. I think the reconstruction of the palace as we go through the episodes in season 3, you see there's like construction work going on, and it's all background, and the palace is restored, and you're introduced to new rooms. I mean, it's always guided by the story, and the story very much in season 3 was focused on Peter and Catherine's storyline together as a couple.
What are you thinking about?
Work. I must be a different leader, led by savvy head and not naive heart.
That's how I always did it.
I'm not the child bride who took this place. And yes, my idealism and speechifying has a place, but so does winning the battles, so that progress is not all shimmering ephemeral words, but of stone and wood.
You're so good at words.
It's pathological.
Well, initially I pitched the idea that they build a new wing together, or that they restore a part of the palace that we hadn't seen before and make it theirs. And that's the sort of direction that we did. They moved together into what used to be Peter the Great's wing. The way we designed the room, it had arches and it had different spaces and areas. And so you often had some foreground elements to play with, and camera would shoot through, and then Peter the Great would appear from the other part of the room. So it's keeping the story and designing with that in mind. We built new spaces for Catherine and Peter to inhabit as a couple, and we built the games room, which was also part of this new wing. And in fact, this is where a lot of the scenes between Catherine and Peter, the couple therapy scenes, take place.
How can we trust each other?
Faith.
Annoying answer.
Agreed.
It's where Peter is breeding a new horse species, and a lot of things take place in the games room. And that was a really fun build. And so yeah, the palace changes in that way that you just see more spaces that you hadn't seen before. One of the biggest challenges was a set build that we did on location, which was an icy lake.
There are many versions of you. And you know I'm the only one who sees them all.
Yes.
And you know I love them all. Even when I find them baffling and idiotic.
Yes, you do.
I just ask the same of you.
A very, very important scene happens on this frozen lake, and we want really, like, it took us a while to understand how to go about the build, and should it be entirely on stage, should it be against blue screen, and we decided, like, there were many meetings to decide how to go about this, and many head of departments, that obviously VFX was heavily involved. But we actually did build a portion of a set to emulate a frozen lake, and that was entirely scenic painted. We constructed a platform, but that was in a field in Kent in the UK, and we shot that during summer. So to create that whole environment of a Swedish forest, obviously snowy forest, and the frozen lake was a huge challenge, and I think our scenic painters did an incredible job at creating fake ice. I'm designing a movie at the moment, which I haven't done for a while, which is very exciting. So I'm working in Germany at the moment, and it's a movie produced by A24, directed by David Lowery, and very, very different from The Great. So it's a story of a pop star and contemporary, yet it's somehow it is world creating also, which is what I really enjoy. And very character driven, which is what sort of really gets me going in terms of designing. Yesterday, actually, my son's little brother, who's 7, asked me about a music video which I designed, which was a world made out of maquettes, and he recently saw it. And we're in this city made out of cardboard, and camera pushes through, zooms into a window, and suddenly we're inside the character's bedroom, and as you sort of get closer with the camera, you do see inside the room, and this little 7-year-old asked me, how did you do that? How did you put a big person inside such a small space? How big were those models? And that for me was just like, okay, this is why I love doing what I do. And I sort of, and my answer to him was, well, you know, that's movie magic, and that was it. I think that is the possibilities are infinite of creating worlds, and I love the idea of creating little or huge spaces depending on what is presented. And I do also really love the collaborative nature of filmmaking or movie making or TV making.